At 4 months pregnant, my husband sent me straight to Sam's bed. Everyone knows that Sam is a tyrant. Mrs. Xia probably won't make it out alive this time. The maids gossiped in hushed whispers behind my back, but my husband acted as though he hadn't heard a word. He even brazenly brought his mistress into our home. Looking at me with his cold, indifferent eyes, he said, "Don't blame me for being ruthless. That's the Sam we're talking about." With a flick of his finger, neither you nor I could survive in Jingbei. Right in front of me, he promised his mistress a legitimate title. I didn't cry. I didn't fight back. I obediently got into Sam's car. Because in my past life, when I had tried to resist, when I had begged and threatened to die, my husband had allowed his pregnant mistress to take my place instead. But within half a month, that mistress had been tortured to death. My husband kept his rage hidden until the day I was discharged from the hospital. That day, he smothered our child with a blanket in front of me. I had tried desperately to stop him, but he had stabbed a knife right into my chest. He had whispered, "This is what you owe Bianca. But this time, I will make sure he and his mistress get exactly what they want." Chapter 1. Kevin sat across from me, holding a cigarette between his fingers without taking a drag. Even through the swirling smoke, I could see the fleeting smirk that crossed his lips. The contract he had signed with Sam lay in front of me, right next to the ultrasound report from my prenatal checkup, an especially cruel juxtaposition. I closed the contract and looked up at him, my voice unnervingly calm. "So, you're planning to trade me for that multi-billion-dollar piece of land in West City?" Kevin stubbed out the cigarette in the crystal ashtray, his gaze lazy and indifferent. "Ruby, don't put it that way. The company needs that land. Without it, you know the company is on the verge of bankruptcy." I stayed silent, my eyes drifting toward the ultrasound report. Then I asked the question I had wanted to ask him in my past life. "Kevin, did you ever consider any other way to save the company?" He looked startled, as if the thought had genuinely never occurred to him. I understood then. I crumpled the ultrasound report and tossed it into the nearby trash can. "I understand. I'll go." I stood to leave, but Kevin called out to me. I turned around, only to see him offering me an awkward, forced smile. "It's nothing. Thanks for your help." I nodded, then walked out of his study. Sam is notorious for being cruel. If she goes there, she might not even come back alive. The maid's idle gossip drifted into my ears, making me pause mid-step. Yeah, and she's pregnant too. If she really goes, who knows what kind of torture she'll face? Especially since that young master is in a wheelchair. They say his bad legs made his temper even worse. Even the housemaids could feel sorry for me. But Kevin, my husband of 5 years, who had shared my bed and my life, didn't bat an eye as he pushed me into the abyss. When I opened the bedroom door, Sandra, the woman who had cared for me since I was a child, looked at me with concern etched across her face. She took my cold hands in hers. "Ruby, why don't you beg Kevin? He's always been good to you. Maybe he'll change his mind." But all I could see was Kevin's twisted face from my past life, the way he had pressed the blanket down on our child's face, ignoring her cries. I could still remember the pain and terror when that knife pierced my body. I gently patted Sandra's hand, my tone indifferent. "It's useless. No one knows how ruthless he can be better than I do." Chapter 2. I had once believed that Kevin and I were in love. In my past life, when Sam's contract first arrived at our home, Kevin's face flushed with anger. He ranted about how Sam was trying to humiliate him and swore he would never send his wife away in exchange for his own future. But when the company's financial reports and pressure from the board fell squarely on Kevin's shoulders, he had no choice but to sign that contract. When I found out, 5 months pregnant, I cried and begged him, even threatening to take my life along with our unborn child. Only then did Kevin reluctantly find another girl to send to Sam's bed. But within a month, news of Bianca's death reached the Yi family. Kevin snapped the pen he was holding in half, then calmly arranged for her funeral. After that, life returned to normal, or at least, that's how it seemed. He accompanied me to my prenatal checkups, even cooked bird's nest soup for me himself. When my water broke and I was rushed to the hospital, he stood outside the delivery room, the picture of a devoted husband and expectant father. He had even booked me into the best postpartum recovery center. But on the day I brought our child home, He had the family doctor inject me with a muscle relaxant. I could only watch, helpless, as he suffocated our baby with a blanket. I cried, screamed, and begged him to stop, but his eyes were bloodshot, filled with the twisted satisfaction of revenge. Only when the baby's cries faded to silence did he take the gleaming fruit knife from the table and drive it into my chest. It was then that I understood everything before had been a facade. The one he truly loved was Bianca. So, when Sam's assistant brought that contract to him again yesterday, just like in my previous life, and Kevin signed it without hesitation, I realized he had also been reborn. This time, he would go to any lengths to protect Bianca and send me away. Sandra's eyes were red as she tried to comfort me, but I just shook my head and reassured her. It's okay. It's just jumping from one fire pit into another. It can't be any worse than staying by Kevin's side. After sending Sandra out, I learned from the butler that Kevin wasn't home. He had gone to the company, or so they said, but I knew better. He had gone to see Bianca. I was the obstacle standing between him and Bianca. This time, he had effortlessly sent me off to Sam's side, and now he could rush into Bianca's arms without hesitation. Kevin didn't come back that night, but I had already made an appointment with the obstetrician. When the doctor heard that I wanted to have an abortion, she froze for a long moment, her face filled with shock as she repeatedly asked me, again and again, "Ma'am, are you sure? The baby is healthy and fully formed now." I lowered my head and looked at the ultrasound image of the fully developed baby. Still, I nodded without hesitation. "Please, doctor, schedule the procedure as soon as possible." Seeing my firm resolve, the doctor didn't press me further. She scheduled the procedure for 3 days later but continued to confirm my decision before handing me the consent form. "Are you absolutely sure you want to terminate this pregnancy?" she asked twice more. Without a moment's hesitation, I signed my name on the form. Chapter 3. When I walked out of the clinic, I saw Kevin sitting cautiously next to Bianca, his arm wrapped protectively around her as they waited for their turn. The moment Bianca saw me, she instinctively hid behind Kevin, but I didn't miss the flicker of guilt in his eyes. I didn't approach them. I simply acted as if I didn't know them and turned around to leave. I heard Kevin call my name, overlapping with the nurse calling Bianca into the exam room. But I didn't stop, and Kevin didn't come after me either. When Kevin returned home, I was sitting at the dining table, sipping on my bowl of bird's nest soup. He cautiously led Bianca inside, holding her hand as though she were made of porcelain. I looked up briefly, then lowered my gaze and finished the last of my soup. "Ruby, this is Bianca," Kevin said stiffly, as if introducing her was a burden. His words were bare, lacking any warmth or embellishment. I wiped my mouth, tossed the wet napkin onto my plate, and nodded calmly. My indifference seemed to give Kevin some courage. He let go of Bianca's hand and slid his arm around her waist instead. "Bianca is pregnant with my child. Since you'll be moving into Sam's house in a few days, why don't you go ahead and move your things into the room next door?" My eyes flicked to Bianca's belly, already showing at about 6 months. So, all those business trips Kevin had taken were really just time spent tangled in her sheets. "Sure, you can have someone move my things to the other room," I replied without hesitation. Kevin, however, seemed displeased by my lack of resistance. His face darkened. "Ruby, what's that supposed to mean?" I chuckled lightly. "Isn't this what you wanted? I'm simply giving you what you asked for." Kevin's expression hardened as he stepped in front of Bianca protectively. I waved dismissively and gave him a small smile. "Relax. I'm not going to hurt your precious darling. I'm not that bored." I turned and went upstairs, leaving Kevin and Bianca staring at each other in confusion. I heard Bianca whisper to him, asking why I wasn't angry. In my past life, Kevin had played the role of the devoted husband perfectly. He pretended to be reluctant, making it seem like he had no choice but to send me to Sam to save our family's fortune. When he brought Bianca to meet me, he spun a story about how her late husband had died in a car accident, leaving her and her unborn child vulnerable. She volunteered. Kevin had assured me back then, wrapping his arms around me and pressing a kiss to my forehead. "Her husband's family was kind to us. Don't worry, Ruby, she's doing this willingly." But that willingness led Bianca to her death, along with her unborn child. Before I died, Kevin had stood over me with bloodshot eyes, confessing through clenched teeth that Bianca's baby had been his. He claimed that I and my child had to atone for the deaths of Bianca and her baby. Chapter 4. I moved into the slightly smaller room next door, while Bianca acted as if she were the true mistress of the house. Sandra, as usual, visited me on behalf of my grandfather. When the bird's nest soup she had cooked for me was intercepted by Bianca, she stormed to my room and gave Bianca a thorough scolding, hands on her hips. That's when Kevin came home. He looked from Bianca, sobbing prettily on the bed, to Sandra standing in the doorway, and the veins on his forehead bulged with anger. He raised his hand to slap Sandra, but my cold voice interrupted him. Kevin, my grandfather treats Sandra like his own daughter. If you lay a hand on her and my grandfather finds out, do you think your company will survive long enough to get that land from Sam? Kevin's fist clenched at his side, shaking with suppressed rage. In just a few strides, he reached Bianca and began comforting her while growling under his breath. Get out! I took Sandra's arm and had her accompany me to get the abortion done. Instead of returning to Kevin's house, I went to Yushue Garden. Sam and Kevin's contract had become the talk of the city, but my grandfather remained surprisingly quiet. As Sandra handed me a bowl of soup, his gaze dropped briefly to my now flat stomach. If it hadn't been for your insistence back then, I never would have allowed you to marry Kevin. I guess things are finally being set right. His words caught me off guard. What did he mean by set right? He said nothing more, only urging me to rest and recover. I didn't return to Kevin's house until 3 days later. Kevin didn't even notice that my belly had flattened. Instead, he tossed a document onto the table in front of me. I picked it up, and the large bold letters at the top read, Divorce Agreement. Sam insists that I divorce you before he'll honor the contract. When I didn't respond, Kevin softened his tone. Ruby, this is just temporary. Once I've secured the land in Shiching, I'll bring you back from Sam's house, and we can remarry, okay? I looked at his fake sincerity, and internally scoffed. Without saying a word, I flipped to the last page and quickly signed my name, Ruby, in the designated space for the wife's signature. As I handed him the signed document, I didn't miss the flicker of smug satisfaction and cunning in his eyes. After our divorce was finalized, Bianca became even more brazen in her provocations. But my love for Kevin had died long ago, and her antics were nothing more than the desperate performances of a clown in my eyes. Still, she enjoyed pushing her luck. One day, she had all my beloved camellias and roses uprooted from the garden and replaced with her favorite roses. I merely sat in the yard, sipping tea, watching her bark orders to the gardeners under the shade of the trees. But she crossed the line when she sneaked into my room and stole the jade bracelet my mother had left me. I grabbed her wrist tightly, my voice low and dangerous. Bianca, I'll only say this once. Take off the bracelet and give it back to me. Chapter 5. Her gaze lingered behind me before a malicious grin spread across her face. Suddenly, she collapsed downward, struggling as she fell. Ruby, what do you think Kevin will do to you if I say you pushed me? She let out a piercing scream. I heard those all too familiar footsteps, and sure enough, Kevin arrived just in time to catch her. In his arms, Bianca sobbed, clinging to him like a fragile flower. Kevin, don't be mad at Ruby. She's just upset that I'm carrying your baby. She's jealous that I'm going to be the new Mrs. Kevin, watching her pitiful performance, I couldn't help but laugh internally. What a second-rate actress. But Kevin, captivated by his weeping lover, couldn't care less about logic. Without warning, he raised his hand and slapped me across the face with full force. My cheek burned, and my ear rang with a sharp buzz. Fury boiled within me. I glared at this despicable couple and, without a second thought, raised my hand and slapped them both back. Ruby! Kevin's face twisted in anger, and he lifted his hand again to hit me. But before he could, I grabbed the fruit knife from the table and pointed it straight at him. Kevin froze in place, his hand suspended midair. Kevin, I don't care whose child your little lover is carrying. As for the title of Mrs. Kevin, whoever wants it can have it. But the jade bracelet on your mistress's wrist belongs to my mother. And if you two don't give it back, I have no problem making her and that bastard in her womb pay for it with their lives. Kevin's gaze darted to the exquisite jade bracelet adorning Bianca's left wrist. Bianca continued to cry, clinging to Kevin and begging to keep the bracelet. Kevin seemed to soften, opening his mouth to say something to me. But before he could, I pressed the fruit knife against my neck, the blade biting into my skin. Kevin, tell me, if Sam's people arrive tomorrow and find my dead body instead of me, do you think he'll still hand over that land in the West City as outlined in the contract? Kevin didn't respond, but I saw the violent fury in his eyes begin to waver. Bianca, however, still refused to let go of the bracelet. It wasn't until she saw the blade of the knife stained with my blood that Kevin panicked. His hands trembled as he personally removed the bracelet from Bianca's wrist and handed it to me. See? Kevin loved nothing and no one, only power and wealth. I carefully put the jade bracelet away. Kevin sighed in relief and quickly called for someone to tend to the wound on my neck. As Kevin escorted Bianca upstairs, she passed by me and shot me a vicious glare. Ruby, when Sam tortures you to death, I'll be sure to convince Kevin to collect your body. I let out a cold chuckle. We'll see who collects whose body first. Because in my past life, when I died, that ruthless and infamous heir, Sam, turned red-eyed when he heard of my death. He showed up at my funeral with his men and buried me in his family's ancestral tomb. Then, he personally ensured Kevin rotted in prison. I still remember how Sam cradled my bone-white urn, his eyes brimming with pain as he muttered, "Ruby, I came too late." Chapter 6. I didn't know why Sam would be interested in me or what connection we shared. But compared to Sam, it was Kevin, the scum of the earth, who terrified me the most. When Sam's car pulled up to the front of the house, Kevin held my hand tightly, putting on a show with tears streaming down his face, playing the role of a heartbroken, devoted husband. I frowned, trying to pull my hand away, but he held on with a death grip. The window of the Rolls-Royce rolled down, revealing Sam's sharp, chiseled face. His expression was cold, his aura indifferent and commanding. He adjusted the gold-rimmed glasses perched on his prominent nose and glanced down at the diamond-encrusted Patek Philippe on his wrist. His tone laced with impatience. "Kevin, there's no audience here. You can drop the act. No one's handing you an Oscar." Kevin, who had been wailing like a desperate man, stopped abruptly. His eyes narrowed, and the tears that had been flowing earlier had completely disappeared. Exposed by Sam, a glimmer of hatred flashed across Kevin's gaze. Sam's driver opened the door for me. As I stepped toward the car, Kevin grabbed my wrist, pulling me close to whisper in my ear, "Ruby, when you die, I'll be the one to collect your body. And when you're gone, I'll take good care of your family's wealth." I laughed, shaking off his hand, and met his gaze, amusement sparkling in my eyes as I chuckled. "Oh, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed." I climbed into the car, leaving Kevin standing there, dumbfounded. As the window slowly rolled up, his face gradually disappeared from my view. When we arrived at Sam's home, his driver opened the car door for me. I watched Sam being helped into his wheelchair, a strange and unexplainable emotion stirring in my chest. "You didn't have to personally come pick me up today." Sam looked up at me, his lips parting slightly, as if he had something to say. But in the end, he remained silent. "Let's go," he said softly, as soon as we entered the house. A girl a few years younger than me rushed forward and hugged me tightly, her voice trembling. "Ruby, my brother finally brought you here." I gently patted her back, but as I looked at her face, a memory from years ago suddenly clicked into place. When I was 10, during a visit to my grandmother's house, I had saved 2 children from being kidnapped. They stayed with me at my grandmother's house for almost a month before their family came to take them home. Before leaving, the little boy had held his sister's hand, tears brimming in his eyes as he promised, "Don't worry, one day, I'll come find you." Over time, those 2 children had faded into the depths of my memory. I fell in love with Kevin, became his wife, and forgot all about that month when I had saved Sam and his little sister and how he had spent every day running around and playing by my side. Chapter 7. When Sam and I last parted ways, he was still perfectly healthy. Why was he now confined to a wheelchair? As I gently patted the sobbing Lisa on the back, my gaze couldn't help but flicker toward Sam's legs. "All right, Lisa," Sam said softly. "Ruby just got back. Take her upstairs to rest." I had a million questions I wanted to ask him, but I knew now wasn't the time. Lisa wiped away her tears and held my hand as she led me upstairs. She told me my room was right next to hers and that I could come to her anytime if I needed anything. She glanced at the small white suitcase standing by the door. "Ruby, is that all the stuff you brought with you?" I nodded. Everything I had left at Kevin's house carried traces of him, and just looking at those items made me feel sick. Since fate had granted me a second chance, I would make sure Kevin and I were completely untangled. Lisa beamed and led me into the walk-in closet. The shelves were filled to the brim with designer clothes for every season. From lingerie to outerwear, shoes, bags, and jewelry covered an entire wall. "I wasn't sure what style you liked," Lisa said with a bright smile, "so I took the liberty of picking out a variety for you." I smiled and hugged her. "Thank you. I love them." That evening, I found myself staring at the table, which was piled high with delicious-looking dishes. Sam's assistant wheeled him over, and his gaze met mine. His voice was cool but approachable. "I wasn't sure what you liked, so I asked the chef to prepare a variety of dishes." I couldn't help but smile as I took in the spread, which was worthy of a five-star hotel but casually referred to as randomly prepared. "Thank you. Everything looks amazing." Sam picked up a piece of lobster with his chopsticks and placed it on my plate. "Try it. It's one of our chef's specialties." I blushed and murmured my thanks. The atmosphere at the Sam household was warm and welcoming, like a refreshing spring breeze. By the end of the meal, I felt much more at ease. Later, Sam came to my room with a glass of warm milk. I had just stepped out of the bathroom when he entered. Placing the glass on the nightstand, his gaze lingered on the faint scars on my neck. I sat on the bed, picking up the glass just as he furrowed his brow and gently brushed his fingers over the marks. A shiver ran through me, and I nearly dropped the glass. I was flustered, unsure of what to do. He frowned and asked, "Did Kevin do this to you?" I saw the concern in his eyes, and my heart softened inexplicably. "Not exactly," I murmured. He scoffed, his hands balling into fists on his lap. "You don't have to cover for him. I know exactly what kind of man Kevin is." I shook my head and smiled. "I'm not covering for him. It's just that, at that moment, hurting myself was the only way to achieve what I wanted." I saw Sam's brows knit tighter, so I added, "But yes, the root cause of it all was Kevin." He sighed and left the room. Moments later, he returned, balancing a first aid kit on his lap as he wheeled himself back toward me. "Sit still. I'll help you apply some ointment." Chapter 8. If anyone saw Sam at this moment, they would never be able to connect the ruthless, cold-blooded air described in rumors to the man in front of me. Carefully and awkwardly applying ointment to my wounds, he gently blew on my wound before cautiously placing the bandage over it. After seeing Sam out of my room, I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, lost in thought. At some point, I must have drifted off to sleep, falling into a long, vivid dream. In the dream, I saw flashes of my past with Kevin. When my parents passed away, my grandfather took me under his wing and showered me with all his love. Everyone in Beijing knew that everything in my family's vast estate would one day belong to me. I had no talent for finance or business, and my grandfather never expected me to manage the family's vast assets. All he wanted was to find someone trustworthy to help handle the empire, ensuring I could live the rest of my life without worry. Even though I was capable of making my own living, my grandfather saw me as the center of his world. He always said, "The girl I've pampered for over 20 years should never have to lift a finger for anything." And so, he began searching for someone from a compatible family background who could be my lifelong companion. On paper, someone like Kevin, a self-made businessman with no powerful family backing, shouldn't have stood a chance with my grandfather. But everything changed that year when Kevin and I both attended an alumni event at our alma mater. He spoke confidently and passionately on stage, and from that moment, he had my attention. Kevin's graceful demeanor and striking looks made it almost impossible for me not to fall for him. At first, my grandfather strongly opposed our relationship. He warned me, saying, "Kevin's eyes are full of ambition, blinded by love." I argued back, "What's wrong with ambition? Without ambition, how could anyone achieve greatness?" He treated me with utmost care and devotion. When people mocked me as a spoiled, talentless daughter who would eventually ruin the family fortune, he always stood up for me. "Who says Ruby is useless? Can you achieve what she's accomplished?" winning so many world-class awards at such a young age? It was his unwavering support that eventually softened my grandfather's stance. My grandfather asked him directly, "Do you truly intend to spend the rest of your life with Ruby?" Kevin knelt before my grandfather, his expression earnest, his voice full of sincerity. "Grandfather, I genuinely love Ruby. I'm willing to swear on my life, I will cherish her, protect her, love her, and never betray her." It was that vow of never betray her that finally made my grandfather relent and agree to our marriage. For the first 2 years after our wedding, Kevin kept his word. He treated me like a treasure, fearing I'd break if he held me too tightly or melt if he spoke too softly. But then, the dream shifted, and suddenly, I was back to when I was 8 months pregnant. Kevin stood protectively in front of Bianca, his gaze soft and full of tenderness. At first, I had no idea he was having an affair or that Bianca was carrying his child. One night, I overheard him murmuring in his sleep, calling softly, "Bianca, don't leave me." I silently committed that name to memory and began investigating it. Within 2 weeks, the truth about Bianca surfaced. She regularly purchased luxury brand clothes and jewelry, always leaving Kevin's name as the buyer. Even though she was visibly pregnant, Kevin frequently visited her at a suburban villa. One time, I accidentally touched a bracelet on his desk, and he immediately snatched it away, saying, "That's not for you." Later, when he brought Bianca into our home, I saw that very same bracelet on her wrist. Even the wedding band I had given Kevin was hanging from a chain around Bianca's neck. The dream shifted again, pulling me back to my previous life. Kevin, like a demon, ripped my newborn baby from my arms. I sobbed and begged him, "Please don't hurt her. She's your daughter." But Kevin showed no mercy as he pressed the blanket over the baby's face, smothering her cries until they ceased. I fell into an abyss of despair as Kevin's face twisted into a triumphant grin. "Ruby, because of you, I lost Bianca. Why weren't you the one sent to Sam's house to suffer? Why weren't you the one who died? She and the baby didn't survive." With a cruel grin, he plunged a blade into my chest. As if that wasn't enough, he twisted the knife, forcing it deeper until it pierced through me completely. I stared blankly, my mind reeling, while he pressed his foot against my bleeding wound. "All of this," he said coldly, "is what you owe Bianca." Chapter 9. When I woke up, the sun was already high in the sky. The dream had been too vivid, and my heart was still pounding with lingering fear. Outside the door, Lisa was knocking gently. "Ruby, are you awake? Breakfast is ready downstairs." I responded softly and got up to wash and change. By the time I went downstairs, Sam was already seated at the dining table. He greeted me with a warm smile. I returned his smile, but Lisa seemed to sense something different between us. She looked at me, then at her brother, and grinned mischievously. "You two feel different." Sam cleared his throat and stuffed a soup dumpling into her mouth. "Eat your breakfast. Nobody said you had to be the spokesperson here." I chuckled quietly and lowered my head to drink my bowl of bird's nest soup. But I didn't miss the fact that Sam's ears had turned slightly red. After breakfast, Sam went upstairs to handle some business, and Lisa dragged me out to the garden. We stopped in front of a flower wall, where she proudly gestured to the blooming camellias and roses. These were all planted on my brother's orders. He knew you liked camellias and roses, so he had them planted long before you arrived. By the time you got here, the flowers were already in full bloom. My heart was touched as I reached out to gently touch the petals of the white camellias. I felt a warm sensation behind my eyes, as if tears were threatening to fall. At Kevin's house, I had personally cultivated camellias and roses, pouring my heart and soul into them. But Kevin had always regarded my efforts with indifference, barely sparing the flowers a glance. He had never cared about my preferences the way Sam did. Lisa then pointed toward a small corner of the garden where Lysianthus flowers were blooming. "My brother only has you in his heart," Lisa said with a playful pout. I told him I liked Lysianthus, but he only planted that tiny patch. He insisted that the rest of the garden should wait for you to arrive so you could decide what flowers you'd like planted. Although Lisa's words seemed like a complaint, I could hear the pride in her voice as she reminded me of how much Sam cared for me. When I didn't respond, Lisa called someone over to pick some camellias, roses, and Lysianthus and send them to my room. Ruby. Sam's voice came from behind us. I turned to see him standing there, his expression soft and warm. There's still time. I've scheduled a doctor's appointment to check your health. His gaze fell on the bandage covering my neck, and any intention I had of refusing the appointment melted away. After the ultrasound, I saw Sam standing outside the diagnostic room, holding my ultrasound report with a furrowed brow. When he noticed me, he lifted his head and asked, "Ruby, where is the baby?" Before I could respond, the doctor walked out. "Boss, she underwent a surgical abortion about 2 weeks ago." Chapter 10. Sam took the medical report from the doctor, his brow furrowed even deeper, and there was a hint of anger in his voice. "Was it Kevin who forced you to abort the baby?" "No, I chose to do it myself." Sam's tense expression softened, replaced by confusion and pain. "Why?" I shrugged indifferently. "I didn't want my child to carry Kevin's blood." Sam's eyes widened in shock. Of course. He was surprised. Everyone in Jibei knew how deeply I had loved Kevin, so much so that my affection for him had elevated a once unknown businessman to the status of a powerful socialite. "Like you said, Kevin is no good. My child deserves to enter this world clean and pure." Sam opened his mouth as if to say something, but then closed it. Instead, he turned to the doctor standing nearby and asked, "What's her current condition?" "Don't worry, Miss Ruby's body is in good shape. This is due to her proper post-procedure care over the past week." Sam turned to me, relief visible on his face. I nodded. "Sandra, who takes care of my grandfather, went with me. She made sure I had nourishing meals every day to help me recover." Only then did Sam relax. He handed the medical reports to the assistant standing behind him. On the way back, I watched his profile in silence before finally speaking. "Sam, you just want to help me, right?" Although Lisa hadn't had the chance to tell me, Sam's behavior over the past 2 days made it abundantly clear he knew Kevin and Bianca were plotting something against me, and he wanted to protect me. He turned his head to look at me, his lips curving into a gentle smile. "What are you trying to say?" "Sam, help me one more time." Since I arrived at the estate, all the attacks aimed at Kevin in the business world had mysteriously come to a halt. With the West City land deal within reach, Kevin was in high spirits. He threw a lavish party at a private club, using the occasion to network with powerful figures and build alliances for personal gain. Kevin had prepared a lavish gift for every guest at the banquet. Each received a small case of gold bars. The attendees were delighted, showering him with endless flattery. "You truly are blessed. Even though Ruby is gone, you've got the beautiful Bianca by your side. How fortunate." "Yes. And now Bianca is giving you a big, healthy baby boy. Congratulations in advance on becoming a father." But right then, the doors to the private room burst open with a loud bang. A group of bodyguards stormed in. "What are you doing?" Kevin shouted. "This is trespassing. I'll call the police and have you arrested." Before he could finish, his face drained of all color. "Sam?" I pushed Sam's wheelchair into the room. The guests fell silent the moment they saw me. "Wait, isn't that Ruby? But didn't Kevin say she was dead? Why is she standing here, perfectly fine? And with Sam? What's going on here?" Kevin's face went ashen, and the glass of wine slipped from his trembling hand, shattering on the floor. "Ruby, you're alive?" He was visibly panicking, stammering. "That's impossible. He's ruthless. How could he let you go unharmed?" Chapter 11. I sneered as I stepped forward. "Kevin, here I am, perfectly fine and alive. Why did you tell everyone I was dead? Is it because your tax evasion and money laundering schemes were exposed, and you're afraid I'll reveal that you sent me to Sam? Is that too much for your ego to handle? Or is it because you want to give that woman outside a proper status, so you thought you could just dispose of me like trash?" With each sentence, Kevin's face turned a shade paler. Hearing me hit the mark, he gritted his teeth, seething with anger. "You're making things up. Ruby, you were the one who cheated with Sam. I haven't even confronted you about it. And here you are questioning me. Why did you even come back?" I chuckled coldly. "To reclaim what's rightfully mine." I pulled out the divorce agreement and the official divorce certificate. "Since we're already divorced, and you were the one who cheated first, I'm here to take my share of the assets and the dowry my family gave me. Everyone around us froze, eyes wide in disbelief. You're lying, Ruby. In all the years you were married to me, everything you wore, ate, and used came from me. Your dowry was spent long ago. There's nothing left to take. He was both furious and nervous, and his transparent desperation made me want to laugh. Spent it all? Kevin, when I married you, my grandfather gave me a dowry large enough for everyone to see. Do you expect anyone to believe that you squandered all that wealth in just a few years? Maybe the money and things you bribed others with were skimmed from my premarital assets. Nonsense. He raised his hand to hit me, but was stopped by Sam's assistant. Hitting a woman, really showing your class. Kevin's face turned from green to purple. He quickly apologized to Sam, but as soon as he got up, he coldly threatened me. Ruby, I advise you not to cause trouble here. Only if you kneel and apologize in front of everyone, admitting that you made all this up, I might consider remarrying you. I scoffed and slapped him in front of everyone. Kevin, how can you even say such things? You cheated first, flaunting your affair in front of me, even trying to take everything from my family. I think you're nothing but an animal. Some people still wanted to speak well of Kevin. Sam just scoffed, and then a few police officers in uniform walked in. They handed the arrest and search warrants to Kevin. Kevin, you've been reported for tax evasion, suspected bribery of officials, and money laundering. Please come with us for investigation. Kevin's face went pale, and he collapsed on the ground. He finally realized it was all over. When the police took Kevin away, Bianca glared at me fiercely. Ruby, have you no humanity? He's still your husband. How could you be so cruel to him? I couldn't help but laugh, shaking the divorce certificate in my hand. Look closely, Bianca. He's your husband now. He has nothing to do with me. Kevin and I have long been done. That day, Sam helped me move almost everything out of Kevin's house. Actually, most of the stuff in his house was bought with my dowry. What couldn't be moved, I smashed, even if it was a waste. I didn't want to leave anything for these shameless people. Chapter 12. I went home with Sam to celebrate Kevin's arrest. Sam and I drank a lot, through the haze of alcohol. He looked at me, his eyes brimming with tenderness and love almost spilling over. He asked me, Ruby, would you marry me? Looking at Sam under the dim yellow light, my heart skipped a beat, and fueled by the alcohol, I leaned in and kissed him on the corner of his lips. It wasn't until he carried me upstairs that I suddenly realized Sam's supposed disability was all a facade. The next day, sore all over, I watched Sam sitting by the bed, trying to please me by offering water, unable to hold back. I grabbed his arm and bit down hard. He just grimaced, put down the glass, and stretched his other arm towards me. Ruby, if you're still angry, you can bite this arm too. I rolled my eyes at him and pushed his arm away. Who wants to bite you? Sam, you could have walked away. He chuckled and climbed into bed, wrapping his arms around me, because I thought maybe you'd stay knowing I'm disabled and I've helped you. I pinched Sam's face, looking it over from left to right, and made a judgment. This man is not simple. He has the potential to be a pretentious coquette, but Sam's initiative is not to be underestimated either. He said he wanted to marry me, and within a couple of days, he took me, bags in hand, to my grandfather's place to formally propose. This time, my grandfather didn't say anything, just patted Sam on the shoulder, then had him join him for a few games of chess. Lisa was peeling oranges for me, and then casually said, my brother has finally seen the light of day. That's when I learned that the year I was going to marry Kevin, Sam had also approached my grandfather to propose. But at that time, I was completely infatuated with Kevin, and naturally, my grandfather rejected Sam for me. No wonder my grandfather told me to restore order. And Sam's legs, they were injured in a car accident the day I was supposed to marry Kevin. Although it was a sabotage by someone in his family, he knew it was because he was distracted, so he didn't realize his car had been tampered with. The doctors all said he couldn't walk anymore, but he wouldn't give up. When he heard Kevin was keeping another woman, he swore he'd one day take you away from Kevin. Lisa shoved an orange segment in her mouth, her words muffled. Looking at Sam's figure, My heart felt tender. Sam and I had a small wedding. Aside from Sam's family, there was only my grandfather and Sandra. When my grandfather placed my hand in Sam's, I saw tears in his eyes. Sam, I'm entrusting Ruby to you now. Sam held my hand tightly and nodded. Grandfather, don't worry. I will love Ruby for a lifetime. When we returned to the house of Sam, a crazed woman suddenly charged at me, screaming, Ruby, you be *TCH. I'm going to kill you. It's all your fault. You ruined my husband. You killed my child. Why is it that even after being reborn, I still end up like this because of you? Why aren't you dead yet? That's when I understood. Bianca had also been reborn. I had just figured this out myself. So, in the previous life, the torment Bianca suffered that led to her death wasn't because of Sam's cruelty. Sam had originally wanted me, but he was sent a substitute instead. Sam planned to send the substitute back, but she poisoned him and faked being kidnapped. In the end, things spiraled out of control, and the bad guys, seeing how beautiful she was, abused her and framed Sam for it. I sneered and shook my head. Bianca, what happened to you isn't because of me. You could have had a good life, but you brought all of this upon yourself. This is your retribution for the bad things you did. In the end, Bianca was sent to prison. Kevin's case finally went to trial almost a year after Sam and I got married. Sam accompanied me, with my pregnant belly, to the courtroom. Because Kevin's crimes weren't just tax evasion, he was also involved in bribery and money laundering. The investigation had taken a long time. When the bailiff brought Kevin into the courtroom, his eyes were dull and defeated. He looked at me, but in the end, he lowered his head. Due to the severity of the charges, Kevin was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of death. As we left the courthouse, I glanced at Sam's profile and smiled as I said, Sam, I'm craving cake from that shop in the east of the city. He smiled and kissed my forehead. Sure, let's go.